Alexander the Great, king of Macedon, was 22 years old when he set out to conquer the known world. Over the next decade, he became one of the most successful conquerors in history. These are the conquests of Alexander the Great, mapped in 3D. Beyond Greece lay the Persian Empire. It stretched from Anatolia to Egypt, to Afghanistan, and into the Indian subcontinent. Despite its size, Alexander's father believed Persia was weaker than it appeared. But on the eve of his planned attack, Alexander's father died suddenly. Alexander rushed to claim the throne, but before waging major wars, he first had to secure his kingdom. His first task was to bring the Greeks back in line. His father had created the League of Corinth to control the Greek city-states, but they had not yet confirmed Alexander as their leader. So Alexander marched south with his army. He faced obstruction, but no fighting. He reached Corinth, where, with his army ready, the Greek states reluctantly declared him their leader and hegemon. With Greece seemingly secure, Alexander headed north, where Thracian tribes had risen in rebellion. As Alexander marched through the Balkan mountains, Thracians ambushed his forces. In his first battle as king, he counterattacked and drove them off. He continued through Thrace until near the Danube's mouth, where he faced two tribes. Crossing the river, he attacked the tribe on the far bank, defeating them totally. The other tribe had fortified an island in the river, but seeing their neighbor defeated, they surrendered and pledged loyalty to Alexander. With the region pacified, Alexander returned south, only to learn Illyrian tribes had also rebelled. He marched on Pelium and faced a close battle against the Illyrians. But here too he came out ahead, forcing their submission. Meanwhile, Athens and Thebes saw opportunity in his absence and declared independence. Alexander marched back into Greece, and at Thebes, he wasted no time attacking the city. After quashing armed resistance, his men looted and burned the city to the ground. The destruction of Thebes put an end to the rebellions. Alexander returned to his capital and prepared his next campaign, the conquest of the Persian Empire. In the spring of 334 BC, Alexander marched east with over 48,000 men. He crossed into Asia without resistance, but local Persian rulers gathered to stop him at the Granicus River. Alexander struck immediately, charging across the river and catching the Persians off guard. The Persian forces collapsed and fled, leaving western Anatolia open. Several cities surrendered without a fight, but at Miletus, he faced resistance. Alexander's forces climbed the walls and took the city by force. Further south, Persian forces gathered to defend Halicarnassus. Alexander besieged this walled city. After a difficult siege, Alexander breached the walls and the Persians burned part of the city as they retreated. Alexander then moved inland, where many local leaders defected rather than oppose him and his new Macedonian empire. But where was the main Persian army? So far, Alexander had fought only local leaders and mercenaries. He passed through the Cilician Gates, a narrow mountain pass where he could have easily been stopped. But the mountains were empty. An illness swept through his army, forcing a pause. He then moved towards another pass near Issus as the Middle East opened up before him. But at that moment, the Persian king, Darius III, marched a massive army north of Alexander's position, cutting off his supplies and forcing a pitched battle against a much larger force. Using the terrain to his advantage, Alexander's forces broke through and attacked Darius directly. The king fled, and his army broke and ran. Afterward, Alexander aimed to cut off Persian naval bases in the eastern Mediterranean. Many coastal cities surrendered, but the island fortress of Tyre refused. Alexander laid siege, starting construction on a massive causeway to reach the island city. The siege lasted 7 months. When the causeway was complete, Alexander breached the walls and captured Tyre. Like Thebes, the city was looted and destroyed. Next, Alexander besieged Gaza. He broke through its walls, looted the city, before continuing onwards to Egypt. In Egypt, he was welcomed as a liberator from Persia and hastily crowned pharaoh. He founded the city of Alexandria on the coast, one of many he would name after himself. He traveled into the desert and secured an oracle's proclamation of his divine right to rule the kingdom. With Egypt secure, Alexander marched into Mesopotamia to confront the Persian king, who had been busy raising a new army. After securing lands west of the Tigris, Alexander crossed the river without resistance. He soon faced Darius again near Gaugamela, where the Persian king had assembled a massive force that included men, elephants, and chariots brought from all corners of his empire. But Alexander's superior tactics and hardened army prevailed. His troops broke through the Persian lines and attacked Darius directly. The king fled once more, and his army scattered. Following this victory, local leaders submitted to Alexander. In Babylon, they opened their gates, and at Susa, Alexander took control of the Persian treasury. Rich and with the empire's heart exposed, Alexander crossed the Zagros Mountains, facing a local mountain tribe along the way. At a narrow pass, Persian forces ambushed him, stopping his advance to Persepolis, the ancient Persian capital. Alexander outmaneuvered and defeated them too, leaving Persepolis undefended. He occupied the royal city before ordering the palace to be burned down. But his work wasn't finished. The Persian king remained at large. After recovering in Persepolis, Alexander pursued the fleeing Darius. He moved through modern Iran, taking cities as he pushed his way to the Caspian Sea. Here, word reached him that Darius had been betrayed and killed by his own men. Alexander found his body, gave him a royal burial, and declared himself king of Asia. Darius's betrayer also claimed the throne and fled deep into the crumbling empire. Alexander moved to catch him, storming the city of Artacoana. He spared its people, but the city rebelled once he left. Alexander returned, this time punishing its people and looting the city. He spent the winter securing control over the harsh region he found himself in. In spring, he reached Ordospana and founded a new city named Alexandria in the Caucasus, near modern Kabul. Reports placed the pretender north of the Hindu Kush Mountains. And bold as ever, Alexander led his men across the treacherous mountain range. He lost a lot of men in the process, but he did make it to the other side, and the imposter king was caught off guard and fled the region before he could raise an army. Alexander took several cities in the region of Bactria, chasing the pretender further. At the Oxus River, he found the man had been betrayed and killed by his own followers. But resistance in the region was far from over. At Nautica, Alexander was forced to storm the city. And at Serapolis, he faced a tough siege. His men breached the walls and destroyed the city, founding a new one in its ruins, Alexandria Escate. He also attacked nearby cities that refused to surrender. Most fell quickly, but seeing the chaos, a nomadic Scythian army entered Alexander's territory, aiming to begin their own conquest in the power vacuum. Alexander met them at the Battle of Jaxartes. He adapted to their tactics and defeated them too. Still, the region resisted, and now Alexander had to adapt to a new style of war, a guerrilla campaign. For 2 years, he and his generals split into small groups to suppress constant rebellion across Sogdia and Bactria. Finally, after capturing the main rebel leader, Alexander wintered behind city walls. He learned that the Sogdian nobility had fortified themselves on a mountain outcrop called Sogdian Rock, and in the spring, he set out to confront them. Alexander maneuvered his men up the back of the Sogdian position, and seeing the writing on the wall, the Sogdians surrendered. He ended the rebellion by marrying the daughter of a local noble. With peace secured through marriage, Alexander set his sights on his next objective, the final unconquered part of the Persian Empire, India. Without Persian control, the region was divided into many tribes and kingdoms. In 327 BC, he crossed the Khyber Pass, planning to conquer the entire subcontinent. At Masaga, a local queen led a desperate defense. Alexander promised safety if they surrendered. When they did, he broke that promise, looting and destroying the city. He marched into the mountains to the fortress of Arnos, where many had fled his advance. He faced off against this mountain fortress where they dropped boulders on his men as they scaled the rock face. But in the end, he defeated this enemy as well, before visiting a holy site dedicated to Dionysus. Crossing the Indus River, Alexander entered Taxila, whose king joined his empire voluntarily. But a powerful king in the region named Porus stood ready to stop Alexander at the next river. This battle was Alexander's toughest yet. His forces were caught off guard during a risky river crossing, and Alexander's horse was killed beneath him. Though victorious, his army suffered heavy losses. Alexander pressed east, fighting local tribes along the way, but at the Hyphasis River, his exhausted army finally refused to go any further. He agreed to turn back, but chose to conquer his way to the sea first. Sailing down the Indus, Alexander's forces looted and burned cities as they went. At the main fortress of Mali, Alexander led an assault over the walls. He was critically injured in the battle, but survived. This city was looted too. He conquered his way to the sea, founding several cities and setting up new administration of the region. Only then did he return to the heart of his empire. He split his army in two, letting part sail back peacefully, while he chose to cross the treacherous desert with the rest of his men. Many died of heat and dehydration along the way. After returning to Persia, Alexander set out to try and govern his new empire. But in 323 BC, while in Babylon, Alexander fell ill. After several days of fever, the great conqueror died. He was just 32 years old. In that life, he never lost a single battle. Alexander's empire would not survive his death, as his generals carved up the empire into their own domains. But Alexander left a clear legacy, both in dramatically expanding Greek influence across Asia and in the numerous cities he founded along the way, several of which are still thriving to this day. But even as he built new cities, he left a wake of destruction behind him. Alexander committed terrible atrocities, and he destabilized the entire region, causing a cascade of chaos that continued long after his death. Many of his generals would go on to found empires of their own, and they have their own fascinating stories. If you want to see more content like this, please subscribe. Here is another video that you may enjoy.